everyone. I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you, Antonio and Ian, for inviting me. I'm Anna Francis, and I'm from AirSpace Gallery in Stoke-on-Trent. I'm going to talk through some of the challenges and opportunities of being based in Stoke-on-Trent, a city built on industry which has, over the past few years, seen our industry, past 30 years, seen our industry diminish. But not completely. And it could be said that in Stoke-on-Trent we're about 10 years behind in some of the deindustrialisation processes that have been happening in other cities across the UK. And that can be seen as an opportunity, but also sometimes a challenge, because the knock-on effect, of course, is that we are slower in getting to the rebuilding and rethinking of the city. There are lots of empty buildings and spaces, as you'll see as I'm talking. And I'm going to talk about how that has an impact on our approach as an organisation in terms of our programming and the work that we do. So if you haven't been to AirSpace Gallery, we are an artist gallery we're artist-led, and we have studios upstairs, we have a gallery space and a resource room, and that's our building, but as you'll see, we also work across the city in various contexts. The organisation began in 2006. It was started by two graduates from Staffordshire University, David Bethell and Andrew Branscombe. They graduated in 2005 into a city where there were no art galleries and no studio spaces available, and they wanted to stay in the city, and so they had to make something happen there so that they could be based there, but also bring artists into the city to work with them so that they could see a contemporary arts programme starting to happen in the city. They worked really hard between 2005 to 2006 to build some partnerships and to persuade the landlord of an empty pottery factory to let them use the factory. In the interim, they bought the factory, the developer, and they didn't know what to do with it at the time. And so AirSpace Gallery organised to take over this empty property, which was full of pigeons, and clean it up and make it a workable exhibiting space with artist studios below the exhibiting space. The challenges of being in an empty factory were many. There was no electricity, no heating, and so they had to have a generator, and actually working with a generator was fine until it was stolen, and then it was stolen again. And every time we had an exhibition or an event, we would be broken into soon afterwards. So it was quite a precarious context to be based in, but a really amazing space to exhibit in. And over the year or so that AirSpace was based in the factory, artists came and really looked at the context there, and we had many exciting projects happening. I first got involved with AirSpace in 2006 when they asked me to curate an exhibition. As an artist, I'm really interested in looking at the role of artists in the city, understanding what I can bring to a changing place. And I've been looking at that since 2006 when I was putting together an exhibition called Indefinable City for AirSpace. That brought 13 artists to look at the impact of regeneration on people, and thank you. And Indefinable City was revisited a couple of years ago in another show called Indefinable Cities, where I curated the show with a Japanese curator, exploring similar themes around the role of artists. And the show was at AirSpace Gallery and went to 5 cities in Japan. The show Indefinable City in 2007 had to be planned for the old factory, but at the time we weren't sure whether or not we would be leaving the factory, so it also had to be planned for a second space in Broad Street in the city centre. As I mentioned, the context was quite precarious for AirSpace, and as a result of the really brilliant work that was being done by Dave and Andy, the City Council offered us a city centre building. This building was originally built for a gas lighting firm about 100 years before, and when we took it over, most of the building was empty, but just one room in the building, which is now our resource room, was being used by an organisation called Grey Power, who support older people. But they vacated the building, and the City Council were trying to designate the area around the gallery as a cultural quarter. So it was a kind of civic-led initiative which encouraged the City Council to ask us as a group of artists to move into this building. In 2007 we negotiated, we were only able to negotiate a monthly lease. We are still in the same position of having a monthly rolling lease, and although over the years we've tried to negotiate a longer lease, we found that we haven't got anywhere with that. And I'll talk about that a bit more later. Over the years we've worked with many artists and bringing artists from outside of the city to come and look at the city with us. You know, this is a kind of a recurring theme around cities and city development, thinking about the global context for artists, but then understanding that in our local context. And one of our early shows in 2010, Ecce Homo Tesco, is kind of indicative of the way that we have worked. Sean Doyle and Mally Mallinson were responding to the closure of the cinema near to the gallery to reopen it as a Tesco. And Ecce Homo Tesco exhibition was developed from thinking around what the future of cities might look like. Ecce Homo Tesco is a kind of evolved human whose arms have grown longer because of all of the shopping. Yeah, so to give you an idea of how artists might come and respond to our context in the city. We also collaborate and have been partners in British Ceramics Biennial since 2009. We aim to constantly rethink our gallery space, and hopefully you'll see that the pictures I'm showing you, although it's not an enormous gallery, it changes each time we use it. So this is from the British Ceramics Biennial exhibition a couple of years ago, when we collaborated with Corinne Felgate with this fabulous installation called Totem, which was thinking about some of the closed potteries and likening them to Pompeii, actually, and reusing some of the biscuitware from the closed factories. And then this is another exhibition which I guess I should mention that we, as an artist-led gallery, there are just a few of us, and often our programmes are built around our interests as members, and so a lot of our programmes come from that place. I guess because we're quite a small organisation, and quite a lot of the time that we put into the things that we do are voluntary, and so if it's kind of extending our practices, that makes loads of sense. So this is an example of that. Alongside Tim Knowles' solo exhibition in 2014, we created a separate room within the gallery acting as a library of walking practices, and we're quite interested in walking practices. Our most recent exhibition, Nothing Remains Unchanged But the Clouds, was Harry Adams' painting show, and this is quite a rarity for AirSpace, actually. We haven't had many painting shows over the years. In fact, I think we've only had one other purely painting show. This was an exhibition of paintings by Harry Adams, which is a duo from L13, if you know them. They work with Billy Childish, and they put together this beautiful painting show. But I guess we always like to collaborate with the artists that we're curating into the space in some way. And so it isn't just about them bringing their work and putting it up in the space. We talk through how the work might fit into the context. So, for example, with this part of the show, Harry Adams came to Stoke-on-Trent, working in the British Ceramics Biennial studio, making pots. They'd never thrown pots before, and they managed to throw all of these pots in one day, in order to house the oak trees that they'd grown from acorns. And we persuaded them to mount a oak tree adoption project within their show. And this is kind of connected to some of the green projects that we're really interested in. in the city. I don't know if you know, but Stoke-on-Trent is one of the greenest cities in the UK. It's not widely known. And we obviously are really interested in that, but quite a lot of the green is kind of abandoned or forgotten. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about a project called the Spode Rose Garden Project, which we've been working on since 2013. So this was an abandoned garden next to the Spode factory, which we noticed because it was the entrance into the British Ceramics Biennial. And as a group, we decided to try and activate and rethink that space. We talked to Rita Floyd, who is a ceramic flower maker. She was employed since being 15 years old in making flowers. We got her to make us a big bone china rose, which we took to Gareth Fryer, a rose breeder, and we asked him if he would make us a rose looking like Rita's bone china rose, which he did. And we installed it in 2015 in the garden as a way of kind of drawing attention to the garden. And at that point, the City Council, who owned the space, noticed the interventions we were doing and said, what's going on with this garden, and can I help you to get funding to develop it? So we worked with the council on the funding, and in 2016 we renovated the garden, and we now set up a Friends Of group to think about the long-term sustainability of that space, and we run regular gardening events and arts projects and activities. Tuesday I was in the garden planting sunflowers with the local nursery. And yeah, we just continue to have this kind of active arts and gardening programme. I would say we are in a kind of, again, precarious position with this project because the City Council are trying to sell off the Spode factory, and this is obviously attached to the Spode factory. So at the moment we're not sure what the future of the garden will be, but it's a very interesting time trying to talk to and negotiate with South African developers about, you know, how this space is used, because this is the only green space in the town, and so it's very much used by the local community. We won a medal at RHS Tatton for a mini display that we did last year, which was then installed in the garden. So alongside some of the projects we do out in the city, we also run a graduate residency scheme, which was kind of based on the original ethos of the gallery, which was to create support networks for recent graduates and emerging artists in the city. And we recognised about 6-7 years ago that there needed to be more support for artists to remain in the city or to attract artists to the city. So the graduate residency scheme has now been running at AirSpace. This will be the 7th year we're just coming into. We offer 6 months free studio space for 2 recent graduates. They have monthly mentoring meetings, and they have an interim exhibition and then a final solo show after the 6 months. This is a really valuable experience for them. And this is one of our graduate residents from 2015-16, Emily Atkinson, who has now gone to be an associate at Royal Standard in Liverpool. There's an open call currently for any graduates that you know to please apply, and the closing date is June the 24th. Alongside our programmes, we also run a number of professional development opportunities for artists, and one of those that's been running a while, since 2012, is the Artist Soup Kitchen. In fact, this is kind of our Artist Talks programme. We found that our Artist Talks weren't always well attended. I think we had one Artist Talk. It depends. We had one recently where we had lots of people, but we did have one Artist Talk where we had one person and a dog, and the dog belonged to the artist, so I don't think you can count the dog. So anyway, we were trying to think, how do we rethink these Artist Talks so that they are something which is more about conversation and collaboration? So the Artist Soup Kitchen is a space where we have half an hour to hear from a speaker, we serve soup, and then we have a discussion. And the Artist Soup Kitchen is seen as a relational artwork. Each recipe is designed in response to the discussion or exhibition. So this is our most recent one in response to the Harry Adams show. This is acorn soup, which served with a blue egg, based on one of the paintings in the show. And yeah, these have been really popular. Only 12 people can attend, and we're pretty much always full. People decide what they want to pay at the end of the session based on how they found the session and how much they can afford. We run artist residencies in the gallery and beyond the gallery each year. We have a couple of those in the summer months. We found that actually programming exhibitions, it's a quieter time, so it's a good time actually to kind of turn the gallery over to a space for artists to develop practices. This was from last year, Rodrigo Artiga, who is a really fantastic artist who was based at the gallery but also across the road in the Potteries Museum and Art Gallery in their Natural History collection. And he returns to us this month for our latest project. So often when artists come to us for a couple of weeks to do a residency, we will often work with them again soon afterwards. This is another one. Stephanie Rushton took part in our residency a few years ago, photographing and documenting creative women working across the city of Stoke-on-Trent. And that work formed part of our Women's Work exhibition, which was an exhibition at AirSpace Gallery and also at the Potteries Museum, sort of making visible some of the unseen labour of women. And this project has continued with the Potteries Museum. It's really valuable project to kind of get the museum rethinking some of their art gallery spaces. One of the things I've been trying to campaign for with their curator is to redress the balance of how many women and how many men are shown in their art gallery. And we're having an impact there, which is great. So we're always looking for opportunities to collaborate our most kind of local neighbour, the museum, has been a great one to collaborate with over the years. This is an example of us kind of trying to make seen some of the really fantastic artists connected to Stoke-on-Trent. So we looked at their historic collection, and then we teamed up contemporary artists with some of the historic collection artists, making new work in response to their collection. So a kind of interesting way to kind of rethink and see their collection too. And actually this was really beneficial to us because we were able to access many more resources by collaborating with them, but also beneficial to them. This was the most visited art exhibition that the museum have ever had. So, really great for both organisations. Thinking about current and future projects at AirSpace, this is yesterday at AirSpace. We're currently building the Brownfield Research Centre. So one of the things that Antonio asked me to kind of touch on was, what external factors kind of impact on our programming and our thinking. In Stoke-on-Trent at the moment, we still have a lot of brownfields all around the city. I think it's changing quite a lot here in Birmingham. Every time I visit, I'm shocked to see the kind of speed of development. But in Stoke still, we have huge areas of brownfield, although they are slowly being filled with housing and new things. And we're really interested in that as a gallery. What is the future going to look like for Stoke-on-Trent, and how can we kind of be involved in actually kind of thinking about this place and the good things about it, and making sure that some of the good things about it are not just kicked out with the change. I'm sure these are things you're all thinking about here too. So this is our latest project, the Brownfield Research Centre. 6 artist residencies will be happening in the gallery over the next 6 weeks. It's going to be providing an overview of work by artists working in this context, but looking towards a 3-year large-scale project with the museum, which is about rethinking and reimagining these spaces in the interim. So they're often seen as kind of eyesores or just spaces in waiting, but actually they're quite important kind of bio-corridors for the city. So we're kind of trying to draw attention to that at the moment. One of the other questions was whether or not the success of our space brings any challenges, and I think it certainly does. I think I mentioned we have a 1-month rolling lease, and that's something we've been trying to negotiate on for over a year. In our immediate vicinity around the gallery, there is a lot of new building work. Right now, across the road, there's a large-scale hotel and housing development, and it's making it even more impossible to try to talk about the future of the building for us. However, I have just been involved in another project, the Portland Inn project, working on a community asset transfer of a disused pub that was in the hands of the council, and 2 weeks ago we managed to have that signed off, so we now own a pub, which will be turned into a community space and social enterprise ceramics making space, and residency space for artists. So that experience, I'm hoping, will help us in negotiating this building. We're in a process of organisational development. We're just coming to the end of a 3-year programme, and we're looking to bring more people into the project. One of the biggest challenges, that question, has been that actually we're quite small. We have a board of advisory directors, but they are advisory. AirSpace really is Glenn Stoker and myself. And we need more of us because I work 4 days a week at Staffordshire University, and Glenn is there all the time, but people imagine from our programme and the work that we do that there are loads of us, and actually there aren't. So that's a big challenge. So we're working with a couple of people that we're kind of looking to bring into the organisation at the moment. We're looking at the stability of the building and thinking about how we can really negotiate that, and then being involved in this new project, the Portland Inn project. As a partner will be also really positive, and will continue the work that we do outside of the gallery in the city, kind of thinking about the role of artists in society. And that's all I wanted to say really. So yeah, thank you for having me.